Hi, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Strata's Orchestration Kitchen. Today, we're going to be talking about moving your applications off of Ping Identity. And I've got a special treat today in that we have a guest joining us today. Chef Tony from the Strata Solutions Engineering team is going to be joining me as we walk through this Orchestration Kitchen story today. So as we think about moving your applications off Ping Identity, let's take a look at the things that we're going to cover agenda-wise as we think through today's episode. So as we kick off every episode, first and foremost, we're going to lead off with a quick identity orchestration at a glance overview. And so that is basically, Tony, I'm going to have you give our audience maybe just a 2-minute what is identity orchestration, just so that everybody has the same foundation for what we're going to be talking about as we do this. As we go into the recipe whiteboard, just like any good cooking show, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at what it is that we're going to be cooking today and what we're going to be working with ingredient-wise. And then we're going to jump into actually cooking with the recipe. I understand, Tony, you've got a live demo all lined up for us.
Absolutely.
That's great. That's great. Well, the fun part about all this is, you tend to think about HGTV or one of these shows where people are going to be like, oh, we're going to put the raw cookies in and pull out the already baked cookies, like it's all done. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to show how you can do this in really just a matter of minutes and get this all put together. Throughout today's session, I would just remind our audience that you can always use the question button that's on your screen right now in Splash Viewer to send Tony or I questions as we go throughout. But without further ado, Tony, I'd like to give you the floor and maybe just give us a 2-minute overview of what identity orchestration is, just to set the stage.
Yes, thanks, Mark. I'm glad that I'm being a chef today for this orchestration kitchen. So, what is identity orchestration? Identity orchestration is a new and emerging category in the identity space that Strata pioneered. One of the main reasons for identity orchestration is what is called abstraction or decoupling, which allows you to separate the authentication as well as authorization from your application stack, giving you that true freedom of choice to leverage the best of breed technologies out there. In a true identity orchestration model, the application can either be modern or legacy. And we've been dealing with a lot of legacy applications recently because typically most organizations put them in their own silo because typically they weren't able to do anything with them, right? Until now.
Mm-hmm.
It allows organizations to leverage your existing or selecting a new identity services if you're choosing. In today's episode, we're talking about how you migrate off ping, right? Because if you are unsatisfied with them or you have some other reasons that you're thinking about, how quickly are you able to get away from them? And then also at the same time, still use other resources like maybe Active Directory or some type of databases for additional context about the user, or maybe you guys are thinking about passwordless solution that you guys want to integrate. All can be done transparently to your end users as well to the application itself. And how we're able to do this is that we have a software platform called the Mavericks Orchestrator. It replaces your custom code as well as manual work that is typically required to integrate identity and application. And we're not replacing your identity. In fact, we make use of all your entire identity solution stack to work all together so that you don't need to rewrite your application going forward to make this work.
That's actually a key point that I want to touch on right there, because I know a lot of our audiences, they were signing up for this particular session. As we think about Ping, you think about an identity, a software-based identity, on-prem identity provider that's really tightly coupled with people's applications. So what you're suggesting is what we're going to be doing today, we're not going to touch the applications themselves. There's no rewrite to the apps. This is all going to be transparent to the apps.
Absolutely. The what we're going to show you today is that I'm not going to touch the application to move to from Ping to a different IDP that you get to see today. My example, I'm going to move to maybe Azure or Entra ID or maybe even Okta. Or at the same time, some organizations like, you know what, we're kind of happy with Ping for right now. But what if we want to bring in a second identity provider at the same time? Can you leverage 2 or 3 or multiple identity providers for the organization? And we're able to solve those type of use cases as well.
I love it. You're throwing a twist into this as we look at what we're going to be solving for today. So if we look at maybe the whiteboard of what we're going to be talking about, as we think about ping identity. So, we talked about the fact that ping identity has been around for ages. It was certainly, when it was introduced, a great product at the time for what it did. And what we've, seen certainly is that as the cloud-based identity providers, the Oktas, the Entra IDs, as they've really advanced, it's gotten to the point where, highly regulated companies, be it financial services or healthcare, might have only thought about ping in the past, but it's a perfectly good option to look at these cloud-based identity providers going forward. And people are really wanting that flexibility, as you talked about. So, today's episode is really thinking about how do we give people flexibility and to set their own destiny as they think about where they're going to go with their identity, and not be worried about forced migrations or forced changes that might be coming down the pike. Would you agree?
Absolutely, Mark. I think that's really the story that we were trying to tell to our prospects and our customers, is that, once you decouple, that gives you that true sense of freedom to do exactly what your business is requiring you to do, right? Because a lot of times when you select a vendor, you have to do it their way. And sometimes it might not solve exactly what the business goals are at the end of the day. Now, once you decouple that, you have that true way to do it your way, that to solve your business challenges.
That's awesome. Well, we're going to be setting everyone free and helping them set their own identity destiny today on this episode. So as we look at this picture, really what we're saying here is just that kind of traditional where ping identity sits into the mix. As you think about this and then how we're going to do this, how would you describe the recipe we're about to see?
Absolutely. So this is we try to make it as straightforward and basic as possible, where the user is trying to get to the application. You currently have ping solution in the middle that's solving your authentication as well as authorization for you. All we're saying is that going forward, oops, let me get back to the next slide here.
Got it?
We're going to be in the middle instead of ping this time. So then when the user is trying to still go back to the same application, now within our platform here, you get to say, let's use a different identity of your choosing, whether it's Entra ID or Okta or the next shiny object that comes down the pipe, right? Because the technology is always evolving. And traditionally, when the technology evolves, it only helps with those new types of applications. But organizations have legacy applications, which those technology stack doesn't work with. So you're kind of stuck again. What we're saying is that it doesn't have to going forward once you decouple that. And then another thing that we notice is that most organizations that use identity platforms, what is the very first thing they tell you to do when you subscribe to their service? Bring all your user records to that platform, right?
Yes.
But in a traditional sense, most businesses, they have their user records all over the place, right? It's not in one spot. So then you at a challenge of how to bring all the users in one spot, that's tough to do for any business size. All we're saying is that you don't need to do that. You just need to tell us where those user information is located, and we'll go fetch it at runtime if it's needed to solve your problem there. So it makes it really extremely efficient and effective to deploy this technology, regardless where your information lies.
I love that, because what we talked about at the beginning was we're not going to touch the apps, but now you're also talking about we can use attribute stores, custom data. We can use all sorts of things where they currently exist without having to change those either. So this really is, dare I say, kind of a magical approach to things, where we're not having to touch any of those, but we're going to get the benefit of our existing investment in other services too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, let's see this in action. I think the really
Love
end
it.
of the
Yes.
day,
Enough talk. Let's get into it. This is
let's
where we,
actually
yeah,
really
start
do
building
this.
the house on HGTV, or we're actually in the kitchen with those cookies. So yes, let's get at it.
Yeah, so we're software that you deploy into your server, whether it's a Windows server or Linux server. You can also put it in your cloud services like AWS environments or your Azure platform as well. So you're going to log in to our web UI interface here. So I'm going to log in, and then once you're logged into our easy to use interface, you have all different buttons on the left hand side. We have what's called the identity fabric. This is where you're going to load up your existing identity stack that you guys are already leveraging today. Whether it's going to be Ping, whether it's going to be, Oktas of the world or Azure or whatever the technology stack that you're looking for, that you already have, it could be deployed very easily.
Got it. And so if I may, I'm just going to point out that the identity fabric isn't necessarily something we're selling here. We're selling the ability to create your own identity fabric, right?
Absolutely. These are the
Okay.
technology stack that you already might be using or
Got
think
it.
about adding in the future as well.
Got it.
Absolutely. Next is we have what's called the applications. The reason why this might be important is that we only charge you by number of apps that you want us to service, right? If you have many apps that's already doing a great job by whomever, we don't need to touch them, right? So we don't need to, charge you for those type of solutions, right? All we're saying is that let us handle your legacy or tough to integrate applications. Let us handle those, and those are the only ones that you're going to be charged for, right? Next, you have what's called the user flows. I would say this is the meat and potatoes, if you want to use the food analogy here.
Sounds good.
Um, the reason is, each user might have a different journey, right? That you guys, as an organization, want to create. So let's take a look at my ping recipe that I already have it deployed here. This says I'm trying to protect this application. And then I can also grab additional attributes, just as we mentioned earlier, from a different source. So meaning, let's say you guys use HR platform that has additional context about the user, or a database or LDAP server. We're able to go fetch it at runtime if it's needed, if it's not already in one spot. And then we have also the access control if you want to. So I have a little sprinkle and a little twist here, my secret sauce, that says, in order to get to this application, you must be authenticated against my ping as my IDP. And then also put a condition that says the last name has to contain Atkins. Okay, so now let's actually see this. What would happen if I log in as a valid user, but it doesn't have the last name of Atkins? So I'm going to go into my Mavericks here, and then you're going to notice that they're going to get redirected to ping, just as that recipe told it to do, right? So now I have a user of Samuel Tate. So what's going to happen is this person is a valid user, but as you saw earlier, the last name did not equal Atkins. So if they try to authenticate here, they're going to get denied, right?
That's amazing. So it's that easy to set up these policies. Policies that might have been hard coded into the apps or hard coded into ping. You're literally doing this on the fly. Super easy configuration for policies.
Absolutely, and that could be based on any attribute too, right? It could be based on location, pay grade, department, manager info. Really whatever exactly that business is thinking about using to differentiate who should be accessing or not.
Love it.
Yeah, now let me actually authenticate against Atkins so that you can actually see the full working condition as well, because a lot of times people want to see that. So let me go back to my orchestrator here. Once again, it's saying ping, you must authenticate. So this time I have an Alan Atkins person. He's going to authenticate. And then once they authenticate, of course, they're able to be authenticated right into that application there very easily, right? So now really the special sauce comes into the next part that I want to show you here. Because once we talked about putting into the fabric, how quickly are you able to change or migrate off certain things, right? That's really the topic of today's session. So on my user flows here, I have one that's already created called, let's say, Okta or even Azure. So let's say I want to use Okta. So I click on Okta configuration. So this time it's going to use my Okta as my IDP. I'm going to deploy this into my orchestrator.
And what we're doing, if I may just read this back to you, tell me if I'm off here, but what we're doing is this is actually sort of that migration step that we're talking about. Instead of, we're actually going to, without touching the app, we're going to go from that ping authentication over to an Okta authentication with no changes to the app.
Absolutely. And once again, you don't have to touch the application ever again if you use our platform here.
Oh, I like this, because we talk in the past about being forever modern and permanently flexible with identity orchestration, because otherwise you get on this treadmill, right? That you talked about, the next shiny object. It comes down and you've got to rewrite your applications again. And then something else comes along. You got to rewrite them again. And doing that at scale is just, it's a nightmare. And so what we're saying is, we do this once, and all of those other services can be easily added to thousands of apps at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. And also think about it in a way of, what if that identity provider is having a rainy day, right? So typically you're handcuffed because you're federated with them. All we're saying is that, what if you have the opportunity to switch it to a different identity provider, whether it's your LDAP or on-prem AD, instead of that one IDP that you put all your eggs in one basket, right?
So we're sprinkling a little bit of resilience into today's recipe. Is that what we're doing here?
Absolutely, as well. So now if I go back to my application here, you're going to notice that all of a sudden now you're challenged with Okta. Earlier, you saw that you have to authenticate against ping, right? So we make it extremely simple to migrate to whichever IDP that the organizations think about migrating off of ping. But at the same time, I think one of the questions people might ask is, we're not quite ready to move off ping, right? What if we still want to use ping, but we also want to use some other IDP at the same time? Traditionally, when you have an application, they only allow for one IDP, right? One master chef in a sense, right? But what
Yes.
if you have multiple chefs? They specialize in their own uniqueness to the recipe or to the cooking show, right? So how are you able to manage multiple IDPs at the same time? So
Chef
this
Tony,
time,
you're reading minds here because this is a question that Michael just asked from the audience. So
oh
please
wow,
go on. But yes, I just wanted to call out. You're reading minds here. Okay.
great. So that I'm going to show you that we have what's called the IDP picker. This could be really great for MMA situation where organization bought out a different company, but they don't use the same identity stack, right? Maybe they use Azure, they use Okta, and they
Absolutely.
don't use
Happens
Ping,
all the
right?
time, right? You're going through an M&A process and you have no clue what IDP they're using to support their workforce identities. And so, yes, M&A is where this is going to come up a lot for sure.
Absolutely. And then it doesn't have to be MMA. You can actually kind of think of it differently as well, meaning your employees use Ping, right? But you have vendors, contractors, partners. Maybe you don't want to muddy up your employee identity source, right? Because they're not really true your employees per se, your partners and vendors. Why you want to have the same data at the same place, right? You might want to
That's right.
separate the
That's
two,
right.
right? So that's also a possibility with our solution there.
Okay.
So I'm going to go into my user flows here, and I have what's called the identity switcher. And then once again, I'm just going to say this time I want to use this flow instead of the previous flow that you saw earlier here. So I'm going to deploy into my arsenal here. I'm going to go into my previous config that I want to deploy. Okay. So now it's going to take this configuration I have. Once again, I'm not changing the application whatsoever, and it's going to deploy it into my stack here. So now if I go back to here, let me close this browser and open up an incognito window. And then when the user tries to authenticate to the application, what's going to happen is they're going to get a little splash page that says, provide me something about you. And we created this page in our orchestrator, but you can point to your website if you want to, or you want to create a custom page, totally up to you, very flexible. All we're saying is that I need to know a little bit of context about the user. And based on that, I can route you to the appropriate places. So in this case, I have a user of pony at strata.io. Based on this domain, it's going to route to my company's IDP, in this case, Azure or Entra ID. But let's say you have a different business or a vendor or partner, they use acme.com because they currently are not using the same email domain as you guys. So if they try to log in, they're going to go to a totally different IDP. So you can have multiple IDPs at flight there.
I love it. I feel like we are on Chopped, and I just started throwing like rotten lobster tails and chewed bubblegum at you, and you're like, "Yep, I can work with all these things," and really making it work. But so as we think back to like the core underlying recipe that we talked about as we started today's episode, ping identity, is really tightly coupled with applications. But what you just showed is, even though it's tightly coupled with the apps, we were able to migrate off of it literally with just a couple of lines of configuration change, and you deployed. It was in minutes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this wasn't smoke and mirrors. This is not the raw cookies going in and literally in the same shot we're pulling the baked cookies out. You did this live, and that's how simple it can be.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons I joined Strata, I'm trying to give you some of my personal take on this as well, is that I used to work at another major IDP and they did a great job. And one of the things I constantly had to battle against was, once you're in that said IDP, you're tightly coupled, you're handcuffed. So they get to dictate exactly your pricing, licensing fees, or technology stack as well. And so a lot of times prospects and customers like, I want you to help me solve my business challenge. And currently that vendor doesn't support it, right? So you have to put it on
Mhm.
ask for a feature request. And typically all the feature requests gets bumped and gets pushed out and so forth. It never really gets solved. But at the same time, that technology that you're asking for, it's already out in the ether. It's already existing, but it's solved by some other vendor. Just that the vendor that you chose doesn't want to make it work with it. All we're saying is that once it's decoupled, why not use the best of breed solutions out there that is available today, right? So that you're able to use that to solve that business challenge.
Do you mind if I grab a question that Eric just posed to us? And he was
Absolutely.
asking, is this, so we made this seem really easy, I'm guessing is where he's going with this. Is this going to work the same for Ping Federate as it would for Ping One, as you think about the two different IDPs from Ping?
Oh, absolutely. Let's actually go back to my interface here. So on the left here, you see the identity fabric. You should see that we already have native connectors for Ping Federate. If you don't have it, you can also use our generic connector as well, where there's a generic OIDC or SAML. So absolutely. And we make it extremely simple, thinking, okay, all you have to do is just select the Ping Federate that you want to integrate with. And then within the Ping platform, you're going to get what's called a well-known URL, your OAuth ID and secret, and basically copy and pasting a few things from your Ping instance, and you have the integration going. So it's really simple to get it working with, whether it's Ping Federate or Ping One at the same.
Oh, that's awesome. Chef Tony, it's great having you here as a guest chef, and again throwing in some secret ingredients and showing a couple of additional things here, because migration isn't always straightforward. It's not we go to bed one night and we're a Ping shop, and we wake up the next morning that we're an Okta shop. That there's often a gradual transition, and you think about co-concurrence as the running a couple of IDPs in parallel. That might just be a natural thing that you're going to be doing through the migration. Or you wake up the next day and you find out you're an Okta company and you're acquiring a Ping company. You're able to support all these different use cases all through this UI.
Absolutely. And let me kind of give you a backstory of some of the things that we are hearing from the market here is that, the MMA is going to happen. What happens is that your IT department, I don't know how big the size of your IT support team is, during that transition, they're literally stressed out because they got all these other users that have to bring all their identity to this other source, right? So they have to create their records and so forth. And while the executives thinking, why isn't it already done yet? We did the MMA a few months ago. Why haven't you guys migrated into a single source? Because it's a quite difficult challenge to do that. People don't realize what immense effort and energy you have to consume to spend to make that work. All we're saying is that it doesn't have to be, right? You get to determine that at your own timetable that's right for the organization. Maybe you want to separate for the time being, and then when the time comes, then move everybody to the one, right? You can decommission the other one. That gives you
Got it.
that time that you guys are, so that your IT and support team doesn't have to lose sleep over, right? So it makes it really very easy to deploy that type of situation there.
Well, I love it. And as I think about M&A, also, you're also feeling pressure from the board and from investors to show immediate value from the new company. And if the old employees aren't able to access the things they need to do their job within the new organization, they're already on the wrong foot. It's a slow go. And so what we're suggesting is they can start that next day, have access to all the resources they need with the IDP that they came over with originally, and that's phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Well, Chef Tony, I know today's episode was, we talked about a lot of different things here. And again, what we wanted to reinforce is the fact that, yes, Ping One Ping Identity on a whole as an IDP tends to be very tightly coupled with the applications, but in fact, some people are thinking it's impossible to get off Ping. I can't go anywhere else. There's a lot of concern that I'm stuck here forever. It's not the case. It's actually quite easy. Easy is a loaded word, I realize, but it's quite straightforward when you're using identity orchestration to be able to migrate off of Ping to the IDP of your choice.
Absolutely. I think it's the time where, identity doesn't have to be sticky anymore, right? Meaning that you don't have to be handcuffed anymore. It can be unsticky to gives you, whatever the IDP that the company is desiring to. And not just that, you can also sprinkle in other technology or emerging technologies that's coming down the pipe as well. And how do you make it work with your modern apps, but at the same time also make it work with legacy apps so that your end users have that consistency through your entire application portfolio versus having different ways to authenticate and log in for each of those apps. Most end users don't want that. They want to make it as easy as possible, at the same time secure as well.
That's it. That's it. Well, yeah, we came up with this idea of creating your own identity destiny. I think I may need to trademark that after this episode so that we can use that later. But nevertheless, Chef Tony, thank you so much for joining us today and walking us through just how easy it is really to move your applications off of Ping identity to whatever IDP of your choice and really set your own identity destiny. It was a lot of fun talking through this with you today.
Thank you. Yeah, my pleasure. I was absolutely had a great time today with you and Mark and the audience. And then, any of our audience members wants to kind of get your hands on and maybe do this on your own or at least try it out. Yeah, we would love to help you guide through that journey. You can easily sign up through this URL and then you can sign up. And then if you ever get stuck or need additional assistance or just want to talk to us regarding some of the use cases that you're seeing in your space that you want to kind of shed that, to us. I would love to join on that conversation and help you guide along your journey there.
Well, I'm glad we put your name here, so they're going to be talking to you directly after this episode. And yes, as you pointed out, our audience, thank you so much for spending your time with us. Hopefully, you saw just how easy it is to move your applications off of Ping identity and really set your own identity destiny. Find that flexibility that you need going forward, and choose where you want the company to go, not be forced to go where you're told to go. The Orchestration Kitchen is an ongoing series. We invite everyone to always check back at the hub for recordings of our previous episodes, as well as to register for upcoming episodes. And with that, Chef Tony and our audience, thank you all for joining us. And we'd like to wish you all adieu until next time. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.